Hello again. This is going to be chapter 13 of Charlotte's Web. The chapter's called Good Progress. Far into the night, while the other creatures slept, Charlotte worked on her web. First, she ripped out a few of the orb lines near the centre. They're the round ones that go in this shape. She left the radial lines alone, those that kind of cross over. As she worked, her 8 legs were a great help to her, and so were her teeth. She loved to weave, and she was an expert at it. When she had finished ripping things out, her web looked something like this. There we go. A spider can produce several types of web. She uses a dry, tough thread for foundation lines and a sticky thread for snare lines, the ones that catch and hold insects. Charlotte decided to use her dry thread to write the new message. If I write the word terrific with sticky thread, she thought, every bug that comes along will get stuck in it and spoil the effect. Now let's see. The first letter is T. Charlotte climbed to a point at the top of the left-hand side of the web. Swinging her spinnerets into position, she attached her thread and then dropped down. As she dropped, her spinning tubes went into action and she let out thread. At the bottom, she attached the thread. This formed the upright of the letter T. Charlotte was not satisfied, however. She climbed up and made another attachment right next to the first one, and she carried that line down so that she had a double line instead of a single line. It will show up better if I make the whole thing with double lines, she thought. She climbed back up, moved over about an inch to the left, touched her spinnerets to the web, and then carried her line across to the right. This formed the top of the letter T, and then she repeated this, making it double. Her 8 legs were very busy. Now for the E. Charlotte got so interested in her work, she began to talk to herself as if to cheer herself along. If you had been sitting quietly in the barn cellar that evening, you would have heard something like this. Now for the R. Up we go, attach, descend, pay out line, wah wah, attach. Good, up you go, repeat. Now to the left, climb, okay, keep those lines together. Now then, out and down, pay out line, good girl. And so, talking to herself like this, the spider worked at her difficult task. When it was completed, she felt hungry, so she ate a small bug that she had been saving, and then she slept. Next morning, Wilbur arose and stood beneath the web. He breathed the morning air into his lungs. Drops of dew catching in the sun made the web stand out clearly. When Lurvy arrived with breakfast, there was a handsome pig, and over him, woven neatly in block letters, was the word terrific. This was another miracle. Lurvy rushed and called Mr. Zuckerman. Mr. Zuckerman rushed and called Mrs. Zuckerman. Mrs. Zuckerman ran to the phone and called the Arables. The Arables climbed into their truck and hurried over. Everybody stood at the pig pen and stared at the web and read the word over and over, while Wilbur, who really was feeling terrific, swelled out his chest and swung his snout from side to side, as shown in this picture. Looking very fat now, isn't he, after all that extra feeding? Terrific, breathed Zuckerman in joyful admiration. Edith, you'd better phone the reporter on the Weekly Chronicle and tell him what has happened. He will want to know about this. He may want to bring a photographer. There isn't a pig in the whole state that is as terrific as ours. Now the news spread. The people who had journeyed to see Wilbur when he was some pig came again to see now that he was terrific. That afternoon, when Mr. Zuckerman went to milk the cows and clean out the tie-ups, he was still thinking about what a wondrous pig he had. Lurvy, he called, there is to be no more cow manure thrown down into the pig pen. I have a terrific pig. I want that pig to have clean, bright straw every day for bedding. Understand? Yes, sir, said Lurvy. Furthermore, said Mr. Zuckerman, I want you to start building a crate for Wilbur. I have decided to take the pig to the county fair on September 6th. Make the crate large and paint it in green with gold letters. And what will the letters say? Asked Lurvy. They should say Zuckerman's famous pig. Lurvy picked up a pitchfork and walked away to get some clean straw. Having such an important pig was going to mean plenty of extra work. He could see that. Below the apple orchard at the end of the path was the dump where Mr. Zuckerman threw out all sorts of trash and stuff that nobody wanted anymore. Here, in a small clearing, hidden by young alders and wild raspberry bushes, was an astonishing pile of old bottles and empty tin cans, and dirty rags and bits of metal. Broken bottles, broken hinges, broken springs and dead batteries, and last month's magazines, along with old discarded dish mops, tattered overalls, rusty spikes, leaky pails and useless junk of all sorts of kinds. Templeton knew the dump and he liked it. There were good hiding places there, excellent cover for a rat, and there was usually a tin can with food still clinging to the side. Templeton was down there now, rummaging around. When he returned to the barn, he carried in his mouth an advertisement he had torn from a crumpled newspaper. "How's this?" he asked, showing the ad to Charlotte. "It says crunchy. Crunchy, that'd be a good word to write in your web." "Oh no, that's just the wrong idea," said Charlotte. "It couldn't be worse. We don't want Zuckerman to think Wilbur is crunchy. He might start thinking about crisp, crunchy bacon and tasty ham. That's going to put ideas in his head. We must advertise Wilbur's noble qualities, not his tastiness. Go get another word, please, Templeton." The rat looked disgusted, but he did sneak away to the dump, and he was back in a while with a strip of cotton cloth. "How's this?" he asked. "It's a label off an old shirt." Charlotte examined the label, and it said pre-shrunk. "I'm sorry, Templeton," she said, "but pre-shrunk is also out of the question. We want Zuckerman to think Wilbur is nicely filled out, not all shrunk up. I'll have to ask you to try again. What do you think I am, a messenger boy?" We've got an image here of Templeton rummaging through all of those discarded junk items. "What do you think I am, a messenger boy?" grumbled the rat. "I am not going to spend all my time chasing down to the dump after advertising material." "Just once more, please?" asked Charlotte. "I'll tell you what I do," said Templeton. "I know where there's a package of soap flakes in the woodshed. It has writing on it. I'll bring it to you." He climbed the rope that hung on the wall and disappeared through a hole in the ceiling. When he came back, he had a strip of blue and white cardboard in his mouth. "There," he said triumphantly. "How's that?" Charlotte read the words, "with new radiant action." "What does it mean?" asked Charlotte, who had never used soap flakes in her life. Soap flakes we would call laundry liquid or laundry powder now. It's that stuff that you use to pop in your washing machine. "Well, how should I know?" said Templeton. "You asked for words and I brought them. I suppose the next thing you'll want me to fetch is a dictionary." Together they studied the soap ad. "With new radiant action," repeated Charlotte slowly. "Wilbur," she called, and Wilbur, who had been asleep in the straw, jumped up. "Run around," commanded Charlotte. "I want to see you in action. I want to see if you're radiant." Wilbur raced to the end of his yard. "Now back again faster," asked Charlotte. Wilbur galloped back. His skin shone and his tail had a fine tight curl. "Jump into the air," asked Charlotte, and Wilbur jumped as high as he could. "Keep your knees straight and touch the ground with your ears," called Charlotte, and Wilbur obeyed. "Do a backflip with half twist in it," cried Charlotte. Wilbur went over backwards, writhing and twisting as he went. "OK, Wilbur," said Charlotte, "you can go back to sleep. Look, there's even a picture of him doing some kind of back twist." "OK, Templeton, the soap ad will do, I guess. I'm not sure Wilbur's action is exactly radiant, but it's interesting. Actually, said Wilbur, I do feel quite radiant. Radiant means bright. Do you? Said Charlotte. Well, you're a good little pig, and radiant you shall be. I'm in this thing pretty deep now. I might as well go to the limit. Tired from his romp, Wilbur lay down in the clean straw and closed his eyes. The straw seemed scratchy. It wasn't as comfortable as the cow manure, which was always delightfully soft to lie in. So he pushed that straw to one side and lay in the manure. Wilbur sighed. It had been a busy day, his first day of being terrific. Dozens of people had visited his yard during the afternoon, and he had had to stand and pose, looking as terrific as he could. Now he was tired. Fern arrived and seated herself quietly on her stool in the corner. Tell me a story, Charlotte, said Wilbur, as he lay waiting for sleep to come. So Charlotte, although she too was tired, did what Wilbur wanted. Once upon a time, she began, I had a beautiful cousin who managed to build her web across a small stream. One day a tiny fish leaped in the air and got caught in the web. My cousin was very much surprised, of course. The fish was thrashing wildly. My cousin hardly dared to tackle it, but she did. She swooped down and threw great masses of wrapping material around the fish and fought bravely to capture it, a scene that's illustrated just there. Did she succeed? Asked Wilbur. It was a never-to-be-forgotten battle, said Charlotte. There was the fish, caught only by one fin, and its tail thrashing and shining in the sun. There was the web, sagging dangerously under the weight of the fish. How much did the fish weigh? Asked Wilbur eagerly. I don't know, said Charlotte. There was my cousin, slipping in, dodging out, beaten mercilessly over the head by the wildly thrashing fish, dancing in, dancing out, throwing her threads and fighting hard. First, she threw a left around the tail. The fish lashed back. Then a left to the tail and a right to the midsection. The fish lashed back. Then she dodged to one side and threw a right, and another right to the fin, then a hard left to the head while the web swayed and stretched. Then what happened? Asked Wilbur. Nothing, said Charlotte. The fish lost the fight. My cousin had wrapped it up so tight it couldn't budge. Then what happened? Asked Wilbur. Nothing, said Charlotte. My cousin kept the fish for a while, and then, when she got good and ready, she ate it. Tell me another story, begged Wilbur. So Charlotte told him about another cousin of hers, who was an aeronaut. What is an aeronaut? Asked Wilbur. A balloonist, said Charlotte. My cousin used to stand on her head and let out enough thread to form a balloon. Then she'd let go and be lifted into the air and carried on upwards towards the warm wind. Is that true, or are you making it up? Asked Wilbur. It's true, replied Charlotte. I have some very remarkable cousins. And now, Wilbur, it is time you went to sleep. Sing something next, begged Wilbur. So Charlotte sang a lullaby while crickets chirped in the dark. This was the song she sang. Sleep, sleep, my love, my only, deep, deep in the dung and the dark. Be not afraid, be not lonely. This is the hour when frogs and thrushes praise the world from woods and rushes. Rest from care, my one and only, deep in the dung and dark. But Wilbur was already asleep. When the song ended, Fern got up and went home. And that's the end of the chapter.